I'd like to now introduce the next speaker. We've been waiting to hear the speaker.
You have to carry five.
Somebody that pulls all of us here. The person is a constant source of inspiration for all of us. And I'd like to introduce him with the same introduction that he was introduced with 4 years ago. And at that time, he was introduced to over 100,000 people through one of the very well-known weekly magazines. And if I could have your attention, please. I'd like to quote the end of the article. A word of friendly advice. This summer, if you find yourself in the vicinity of Bethel or White Lake, and the sky is growing dark, drive over to the little shul for Mincha and stay for the short drasha following. You may be inspired or learn something new. You might cry, you might laugh, depending on the night. But one thing's for sure, you'll never regret your visit. Rabbi Sai, Rav, Fishbain Shlipa.
I apologize that I couldn't start up. I had a hobble up to the, unfortunately, some 4 or 5 weeks ago, I broke a hip. I guess I needed a break. And listening to all the shvachim, and then you can sit down. Listening to all the shvachim and the praise, and it seems that they came to praise the rabbi, not to bury him. And recently, I had to deliver a hesed, a eulogy for a politician with a tainted reputation. And I had to struggle to find Baruch Hashem. I put together a hesed, and I found some complimentary things to say about the nifter, the deceased. And his almana, his widow, came over to me after the riot, the hesed, the eulogy. He said to Rabbi, she said, you know, if my Yanko, if my Jack, if he had known you were going to say so many complimentary things about him, and it was going to be such a large turnout, believe me, he would have died years ago. All that we have given gladly for this night, a night of triumph and tears, when under one roof we welcome citizens from Chus to Munkach, from Salish and from Ungvar, and even from Bells, my Stetler Bells. And even citizens from Brooklyn, Satmar, and Lubavitch, from all over, from every sphere and every circle. We welcome them here tonight. And also the very elite of public servants in the entire Sullivan County, including our town supervisor, Mr. Danny Sturm, and the deputy sheriff as well. And a very, very special town clerk, Rita Sheehan, is always there. She's there for everybody. When the first call that we received after the invitations went out, there came a call from a gentleman who's here this evening, and he said that he is very backed up in his field. He's an electrical contractor, and he's very backed up in work. But as backed up as he is, he wants to, for him, reserve the mitzvah of installing all of the elaborate lighting that's here in our, this evening in our hall. And he should definitely not, we shouldn't have any thoughts whatsoever. He'll be here. He wants the mitzvah all for himself. This is none other than Rachamim Glanstein. If he's here, Rachamim, please rise. On a Wednesday morning, he, his son, Shlomo Zalman, and a crew of 2 men spent almost an entire day here installing all of this lighting. Thank you very much, Rachamim. Now, a word from our sponsor, the Chofetz Chaim, the saintly Chofetz Chaim. There came, when he was in the midst of building the Rabiner Yeshiva, there came forward a Nathan, a philanthropist about Stocky. And he said he wanted to finance, he himself solely wants to give the entire money that's going to cost for the eastern to Mizrach wall of the Medrash. So Chaim looked at him and he said, "My dear Yid, who are you? Who is your father? Where were you raised? What mitzvah did you do before that this mitzvah in its train should bring you this big mitzvah? To do a mitzvah like that, to be Maslik Torah, to spread the word of Hashem, the light of Torah throughout the world for generations, someone has to have a very special schus. Our guest of honor, Moshe Yosef Berkowitz from Fagin, is this type of mishpacha. A mishpacha that has many, many schusim. And that's why we chose him, and that's why he was the one that was able to bring this message to our entire oilum here tonight. A deep debt of gratitude. The doctors and the therapists and the nurses, everybody was amazed at my miraculous recovery. I was able to walk without a walker, without a cane, in such a short time after surgery. And I was due only to all of your tefillahs. And of course, it was due also to my dear Rebbe, who through my entire stay in the hospital refused to leave my bed. She said, night after night, sleepless nights in the hospital. And that's only less than half the story. And after I left the hospital, then she had to deal, with a healthy husband is a halbitzer to deal with. But with a sick husband, a nudnik, cranky, not well, that's a different story altogether. And she was there every moment of the day, early morning to late at night, to attend to me, to put me back. And this was the biggest refuah and the biggest therapy I possibly could have benefited from. Thank you very much. In fact, I recovered so well that one of the doctors said, they said that most probably he didn't break a hip altogether. He probably had a couple screws missing. The Shisnai, Sidrishu, Uvasisham. We should seek out in the Bakish, the Shisnai, Sidrishu, to divide the presence of our Kadosh Baruch Hu. Some 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, there was a very famous lawsuit. The Pennsylvania Railroad was sued for over $1 million over 100 years ago. Today it's like $1 billion. And they were sued because of their negligence. On a great crossing, the train plowed into a motorist and he was crippled, disabled for life. Why was their negligence? Because the motorist and his passengers testified that the usual procedure of a motorman waving a lantern to warn oncoming motorists of a train, he failed to wave that lantern. Witness after witness, and the motor himself. And it looked like the Pennsylvania Road was about to go out of business. $1 million in those days. And the attorney defending Pennsylvania Railroad put the motorman on the stand. He says, "Sir, what is your name?" "Walter Christopher." Were you the motorman on train 257 on November 6, 1912? He said, "Yes." At 8:30 in the evening? "Yes." "Did you have with you a lantern?" He says, "Yes." "Did you wave that lantern?" He said, "Yes." "Did you wave it the prescribed amount of times?" He said, "Yes. I waved it back and forth, the prescribed amount of time." Thank you very much, Mr. Prosecutor, your witness. The attorney for the plaintiff could not shake his testimony. And the jury was so impressed by the authenticity and the truthfulness of the witness that they brought back a verdict of not guilty, and the Pennsylvania Railroad saved $1 million. The next morning, the president of Pennsylvania Railroad called in the motorman. And he said to Mr. Christopher, "The doors are locked. The shades are drawn. There's nothing to record what's going to take place between you and me. I want to ask you, first of all, we're deeply grateful. You rescued the Pennsylvania Railroad. You're set for life. You have a pension, you have anything you need for life. But tell me, you're such a dear friend that you lied. What made you do it?" He said, "Mr. President, I didn't lie." He says, "What do you mean you didn't lie? There are all those witnesses that swore on their oath that they did not see a lantern. Did you really swing that lantern?" He says, "Absolutely, Mr. President. So why didn't they see it?" He said, "There was no light." Right. There are temples, there are synagogues, there are houses of worship, but there's no light. We got calls from many In fact, the one who put up this hall here, he said, Rabbi, I don't understand. Every year, he said, you always order a bigger hall, a bigger tent. But the last 3 years, it seems that you're growing constantly your synagogue, your house of worship. What has happened the last 3 years, you're ordering the same size tent. I said, my little Mr. Paglioni, I said, we have no more room. We outgrew our grounds. We have no more room to make a larger tent. We're at the very foot of the end of our property. This is the story. Because we shift my sidrishu was a shom. In our Besmedrish, a very moving scene took place. It was on Yisr Yom Kippur. The Kohanim went up to Duchen. And one of our mispalim broke out into hysterical tears. And we went over to him to see what the problem is. And after seeing that he seems to be fine, there's nothing seriously wrong with him, he finally wiped off his tears and he told us, what's the source of his winter? What's the source of those tears? And he told us, he said, when he saw all those shoes that the Kohanim took off before Duchening, the brothers Kohanim, shot back in his memory, he was on the tour of the atrocities of the Holocaust. And he was at the Danube River. And he saw there a monument of shoes all along the bank of the Danube River. From the atrocities, unbelievable atrocities of the Germans of the Holocaust. They took and shot innocent concentration camps inmates. They shot Eden by the bank to make sure that they fall in and drown, and they suffer the most excruciating death possible. Those shoes, who's going to fill those shoes to continue that our Torah, the light of Torah, and our heritage should continue everlasting until Mashiach? These shoes shot back to those shoes. All of those names that we mentioned here tonight, their shoes will be filled. They'll be filled by children and grandchildren who will continue and follow their footsteps. And from them will go out Doris Yisharim. They'll go out, they'll hasten the coming of Mashiach. B'mher Yameinu. Amen.